When out-of-work concierge Brielle walks into the wrong interview, she stumbles into the life of billionaire CEO Dorian Kessler. What starts as a mix-up sparks a connection neither expected and a future neither saw coming. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Brielle Adams stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing down her only good blazer. At 34, she had expected to be in a different place in her life by now, not preparing for a second interview at a small floral company after being laid off from her hotel concierge job 3 months ago. "You can do this," she told her reflection, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. Her savings were nearly gone, and this job was her best hope right now. She grabbed her worn leather purse and rushed out of her small apartment. The spring morning was crisp as she hurried to catch the downtown bus. "Morning, Mrs. Patel," she called to her elderly neighbor, who was watering plants on her tiny balcony. "Good luck today, dear," the old woman called back. "You'll get this job, I know it." Brielle smiled. That was one thing she had always been good at, connecting with people, making them feel seen. Even during her darkest days after losing her job, she made sure to check on Mrs. Patel and bring her groceries when needed. 45 minutes later, Brielle arrived at a gleaming skyscraper in the downtown business district. She checked the address on her phone again. This seemed much fancier than she had expected for a boutique floral company. At the front desk, a young receptionist with perfectly styled blonde hair greeted her with a practiced smile. "Good morning. I'm here for my interview at 10 o'clock. Brielle said. "Your name, please," the receptionist asked, not looking up from her computer. "Brielle Adams," the woman typed quickly. "Brielle Adams," she muttered. "Oh, here you are. Looks like you're heading to room 14B on the top floor." She handed Brielle a visitor's badge. "The elevator on the right will take you directly up." "Thank you," Brielle said, trying to calm her nerves as she clipped the badge to her jacket. The elevator was sleek and silent, rising so quickly that Brielle's ears popped. When the doors opened, she found herself in a reception area more luxurious than any hotel she'd worked in. The walls were glass and steel, and modern art pieces hung everywhere. "This can't be right," she whispered to herself, but the badge clearly said room 14B, and there was the door at the end of the hallway with those exact numbers. Taking a deep breath, she approached the receptionist, another immaculately dressed woman. "Hello, I'm Brielle Adams. I have an interview at 10 o'clock, the woman nodded. "They're expecting you, go right in." Brielle opened the heavy door and stepped into a massive conference room. 4 people sat at a long glass table, 3 men in dark suits, and 1 man at the head of the table whose presence seemed to fill the entire room. He was around 40, with dark hair graying slightly at the temples and piercing blue eyes that locked onto hers immediately. His suit looked more expensive than her entire apartment's contents. "Miss Adams, please have a seat," one of the suited men said, gesturing to the chair across from them. Brielle sat down, her mind racing. This was definitely not a floral shop, but she couldn't just run out now. She needed a job, any job. And maybe this was some corporate parent company of the floral business. "So, Miss Adams," the man at the head of the table finally spoke, his voice deep and measured. "Tell us why you're interested in this position." Brielle hesitated for just a moment. "Well, I've always believed that flowers are more than just decoration. They mark the most important moments in people's lives. Celebrations, apologies, grief, love. Being part of that feels meaningful." The 3 suits exchanged confused glances, but the man at the head of the table leaned forward slightly, his intense gaze never leaving her face. "Interesting perspective. And what would you say drives you in your professional life?" Without overthinking, Brielle answered from the heart. "Making people feel safe, seen like they matter." She smiled slightly. "It might sound simple, but I believe it's what we all want, deep down." The 3 suits chuckled politely, but the man at the head of the table didn't. He just stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "And how would that apply to being an executive assistant to the CEO of Falcon Core Holdings?" he asked quietly. Brielle's smile froze. "Falcon Core Holdings? Executive assistant?" Her heart sank as realization dawned. She was in the wrong interview. I think there's been a mistake," she said, her cheeks flushing. "I was supposed to be interviewing at Bloom Boutique Florals. I don't know how I ended up here. She stood up quickly, nearly knocking over her chair. I'm so sorry for wasting your time. I should go. Wait. The word wasn't loud, but it carried such authority that Brielle stopped immediately. The man at the head of the table stood up. I'm Dorian Kessler, CEO of Falcon Core Holdings. He gestured for her to sit back down. Stay, please. Something in his voice made it impossible to refuse. Brielle slowly lowered herself back into the chair. Gentlemen, give us the room, Dorian said to the three suits, who exchanged surprised glances before filing out silently. When the door closed, leaving them alone, Dorian moved to the chair closest to her. So you're not here to apply for the executive assistant position, he said. It wasn't a question. No, Mr. Kessler, there was some mix-up with the receptionist. I was supposed to be on the 3rd floor, I think, not the top floor. Dorian nodded slowly, studying her in a way that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow didn't. Tell me about yourself, Brielle. Not the interview version. The real one. Brielle hesitated, then sighed. I was a hotel concierge for 8 years until they downsized 3 months ago. I've been looking for work ever since. Not much to tell beyond that. I disagree, Dorian said quietly. People don't usually answer questions the way you just did, making people feel like they matter. Most candidates would have talked about efficiency or ambition. Brielle shrugged. Maybe that's why I'm still unemployed. For the first time, Dorian's expression softened into something close to a smile. Or maybe that's why you just became the most interesting person I've met in years. He leaned back in his chair. Let me ask you something else. If money wasn't an issue, what would you do with your life? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. No one's ever asked me that before. She thought for a moment. I'd probably still work with people, maybe start a community center in my neighborhood. We have a lot of elderly residents who don't have family nearby. Dorian nodded as if confirming something to himself. One more question. Do you believe in fate, Brielle? She raised an eyebrow. Is this still part of the wrong interview? Dorian actually smiled then, a genuine one that transformed his serious face. Just curious. I believe things happen for a reason, she answered carefully, but I also believe we make our own choices. Dorian checked his watch and stood up. I've taken enough of your time. You have another interview to get to. He walked to the door and opened it, then paused. For what it's worth, Bloom Boutique would be lucky to have you. Thank you, Brielle said, gathering her purse. And again, I'm sorry for the mix-up. I'm not, Dorian said simply, holding her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. As she walked out, she heard him tell his assistant, Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day. Brielle barely made it to her actual interview on time, her mind still spinning from the strange encounter upstairs. The interview at Bloom Boutique went well, despite her distraction, and they promised to call her within a week. The next morning, Brielle was at her usual coffee shop, the worn but cozy neighborhood spot where she applied for jobs online when her apartment walls started closing in. She was updating her resume when the door chimed. She looked up automatically and nearly spilled her coffee. Dorian Kessler had just walked in, looking slightly out of place in his tailored suit among the usual crowd of college students and neighborhood regulars. His eyes scanned the room and stopped when they found her. Without hesitation, he walked directly to her table. Miss Adams, what a surprise, he said, though something in his tone suggested it wasn't a surprise at all. Mr. Kessler, she replied, too shocked to say more. Please call me Dorian. He gestured to the empty chair across from her. May I? Sure, she said, quickly moving her laptop aside. He sat down with a grace that seemed effortless. Do you come here often? He asked, then winced slightly. That sounded like a terrible pickup line, didn't it? Brielle couldn't help but smile. A little bit, but yes, I do come here often. You, however, don't seem like you do. First time, he admitted. I had a meeting nearby. He didn't elaborate on what kind of meeting would bring the CEO of Falcon Core Holdings to this modest neighborhood. The barista approached their table, clearly recognizing Brielle. Your usual refill, Brie? Yes, thanks. Mia. And for you, sir? The young woman asked Dorian. Whatever she's having, he replied, nodding toward Brielle's cup. When Mia left, Brielle raised an eyebrow. You don't even know what I'm drinking. "I'm feeling adventurous today," he said with a hint of amusement. "Yesterday I had an interview with the wrong candidate, and today I'm trying mystery coffee. Who knows what's next?" There was something disarming about the way he spoke to her, like they were old friends rather than strangers who'd met under awkward circumstances. "Did you hear back from Bloom Boutique?" he asked, genuinely seeming to care about the answer. "Not yet. They said they'd call within a week," Dorian nodded. "Well, I hope—" "Your drinks," Mia interrupted, placing 2 steaming mugs on the table. Dorian took a sip and actually looked surprised. "This is good. What is it?" "Just a vanilla latte with an extra shot," Brielle said, amused by his reaction. "Nothing fancy. Sometimes the simple things are best," he replied, his eyes meeting hers over the rim of his mug. They talked for nearly an hour, about nothing and everything. Brielle found herself telling him about growing up with her grandmother after her parents died, about her passion for helping the elderly residents in her building, about her favorite books. Dorian was harder to read, answering her questions about himself with brief responses before turning the conversation back to her. But she learned he had built Falcon Core from a struggling company into a powerhouse over the past 15 years, that he lived alone, and that he worked too much. By his own admission, "I should let you get back to your job search," he finally said, glancing at her laptop. "And you probably have a company to run," she replied with a small smile. He stood up and hesitated. "Brielle, would you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" "Beans?" Question surprised her. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because men like you don't ask women like me to dinner without a reason." Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or understanding. "Fair enough. But sometimes the reason is simply wanting to continue a conversation that feels—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Real." Before she could respond, he placed his business card on the table. "If you change your mind, call me anytime." As he walked out, Brielle stared at the card. What had just happened? And why couldn't she shake the feeling that her life had somehow shifted on its axis? 3 days later, Brielle got the call from Bloom Boutique. They had decided to hire someone with more direct floral experience. She hung up and fought back tears. Another rejection. Her bank account was dangerously low, and she had no idea what to do next. On her way home, she passed by the old flower shop across from the hotel where she used to work. To her surprise, it was being renovated, the faded "going out of business" sign replaced with a bright new one, "Opening soon Wildflower Studio." A tall figure stood in the doorway directing workers. It took her a moment to recognize Dorian Kessler in casual clothes, jeans and a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He spotted her before she could decide whether to approach him or walk away. "Brielle," he said, his face lighting up as he crossed the street to meet her. "What are you doing here?" she asked, confusion evident in her voice. "I bought the flower shop," he said simply, as if purchasing businesses was an everyday occurrence, which, for him, it probably was. "Why?" He looked slightly embarrassed. "It seemed like a good investment." "Across from my old workplace, that's quite a coincidence." Dorian had the grace to look caught. "I wanted to talk to you again. You never called." "So you bought an entire business just to run into me?" Brielle wasn't sure whether to be flattered or concerned. "When you say it like that, it sounds stalkerish," she supplied. He winced. "I was going to say excessive. But you're right." His expression grew serious. "I'm not usually this so impulsive. There's just something about you, Brielle. I can't stop thinking about our conversation." Brielle shook her head, unable to process what was happening. "This is crazy. You don't even know me." "I'd like to," he said simply. "Have dinner with me, just once. If you never want to see me again after that, I'll respect your decision." She should say no. Men who could buy businesses on a whim to meet women were exactly the kind of men she avoided, but there was something in his eyes. A vulnerability that seemed at odds with his power and position. "One dinner," she finally agreed, "and no more buying businesses to get my attention." His smile was like sunrise breaking across his face. "Deal." As they stood there on the sidewalk, with workers bustling around the newly purchased flower shop and pedestrians hurrying past. Neither of them realized that their wrong-turn meeting in room 14B was about to change both their lives forever. The fine restaurant Dorian chose for their dinner was elegant, but not ostentatious, a small Italian place with warm lighting and private booths. Brielle wore her best dress, a simple navy blue number that she'd bought years ago for a cousin's wedding. When she arrived, Dorian was already waiting at a corner table. He stood up when he saw her, his eyes taking in every detail of her appearance. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." She sat down, trying to calm her nerves. "This place is lovely. It's one of the few restaurants where I can eat without being interrupted by business associates," Dorian explained. "The owner is an old friend." As if on cue, an older man with salt and pepper hair approached their table. "Dorian, it's been too long." "Marco," Dorian greeted him warmly. "This is Brielle Adams. Brielle, this is Marco Rossi, the best chef in the city and an old family friend." "Any friend of Dorian's is family here," Marco said, taking Brielle's hand and kissing it with old-world charm. "I'll take care of everything tonight." After Marco left, Brielle raised an eyebrow. "Do you ever actually order food, or do people just bring you what they think you want?" Dorian laughed, a genuine sound that made his face look younger. "Marco ignores the menu for special guests. Trust me, it's better that way." "So, are you going to tell me the real reason you bought that flower shop?" Brielle asked, taking a sip of the water the waiter had poured. Dorian's expression grew more serious. "The honest truth, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that mix-up in room 14B. Why? I'm nobody special." "That's where you're wrong," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Do you know how many people I meet who are completely pretending? Who say what they think I want to hear? You walked into that room with no idea who I was, and you were completely yourself." Brielle considered this. "I still think buying a business is an extreme way to run into someone again." "I did try the coffee shop first," he reminded her with a small smile. "But you're right, I'm not used to—" He hesitated. "Not getting what I want. It's not my most attractive quality." Marco returned with 2 glasses of wine and a plate of appetizers. "My special antipasto. Enjoy." As they ate, Dorian asked her about her job search. Brielle sighed. "Not good. Bloom Boutique hired someone else. I've applied to 20 other places this week alone." "I could help," Dorian offered. "One phone call." "No," Brielle interrupted firmly. "I appreciate the thought, but I need to do this on my own." Instead of looking offended, Dorian nodded with what appeared to be respect. "I understand, but the offer stands if you change your mind." The conversation flowed easily through several courses of Marco's excellent food. Brielle learned that Dorian had lost both parents in his early 20s, which had forced him to take over the family business when he was barely out of college. "It was struggling then," he explained. "My father was a brilliant inventor but a terrible businessman. I had to make some hard decisions to save it." "It sounds lonely," Brielle said, seeing beyond the success to the human cost. Something flickered in Dorian's eyes. "It was. It still is sometimes." "What about family, siblings, cousins?" "A younger sister, Vanessa. She lives in Europe most of the year. We're not particularly close." "And you've never married?" Brielle asked, then immediately felt too forward. "Sorry, that's personal." "I don't mind," Dorian said. "No, I've never married. There was someone years ago, but her father was one of my competitors. It became complicated." The way his expression closed off told Brielle there was much more to that story than he was sharing. "What about you?" he asked, clearly wanting to change the subject. "No husband? Boyfriend?" "No husband. There was a fiancé about 5 years. How about Jeff?" She paused, the memory still carrying a sting. "He decided that a hotel concierge wasn't ambitious enough for him. He's married to a corporate lawyer now." Dorian's eyes darkened. "He sounds like an idiot." Brielle laughed. "That's what my grandmother said too, God rest her soul." "Tell me about her," Dorian said, seeming genuinely interested. "She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. She worked as a housekeeper for wealthy families her whole life. She taught me that real worth isn't about what you have, but who you are when no one important is watching." Sounds wise. She was. She died 2 years ago. Some days I still reach for the phone to call her. Dorian reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm and surprisingly gentle. I'm sorry. The sincerity in his voice touched something. In Brielle. For a man who commanded a corporate empire, there was a vulnerability to him that she hadn't expected. By the time dessert arrived, Brielle realized she was genuinely enjoying herself. Dorian wasn't at all what she had expected. Yes, there was that intensity about him, but also a quiet thoughtfulness and unexpected moments of humor. So what happens to the flower shop now? She asked as they shared a tiramisu. I'm not sure, Dorian admitted. I hadn't thought that far ahead. You bought a business without a plan? That doesn't sound like a successful CEO. He smiled a bit sheepishly. I told you, I'm not usually this impulsive. After dinner, he walked her to her bus stop, despite her protests that he could call her a taxi. I don't mind the walk, he said. It's a nice night. At the bus stop, they stood facing each other, an awkward moment hovering between them. Thank you for dinner, Brielle said. It was lovely. Can I see you again? Dorian asked directly. Brielle hesitated. Dorian, I don't know if that's a good idea. We're from completely different worlds. Does that matter? If we enjoy each other's company? It might. Eventually, he studied her face. You're not like anyone I've ever met, Brielle Adams. Is that good or bad? Definitely good. He reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering for just a moment. Think about it, please. Before she could answer, her bus arrived. She boarded quickly, looking back to see him standing there watching as the bus pulled away. The next morning, Brielle woke to a text from an unknown number. Good morning. It's Dorian. I hope it's okay that I got your number from the visitor log at Falcon Core. I enjoyed last night. She stared at the message, torn between being flattered and concerned at how easily he had accessed her personal information. She typed out a reply. That's a bit invasive, don't you think? But I enjoyed last night too. His response came quickly. You're right. I apologize. I'm not used to normal dating protocols. Can I make it up to you with a walk in the park this Saturday? Brielle smiled despite herself. There was something endearing about his honesty. Okay, but this time I choose the place. Morton Community Park at 2 p.m. I'll be there, came his simple reply. Saturday was sunny but cool. Brielle arrived at the small neighborhood park early, dressed casually in jeans and a light sweater. She half expected Dorian to arrive in a chauffeur-driven car, but instead, he walked up right on time, wearing dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. No suit today, she teased as he approached. I do own casual clothes, he replied with a smile, though my assistant nearly had a heart attack when I walked out of the office like this yesterday. They began walking along the winding paths of the park. Children played on the swings while elderly couples sat on benches, enjoying the spring day. So this is your world, Dorian said, taking in the modest surroundings. Part of it. I volunteer at the community center over there on Sundays. She pointed to a brick building at the edge of the park. We do lunch for seniors who live alone. Most of them just come for the company. Dorian looked thoughtful. That's what you meant about making people feel like they matter, Brielle nodded. Everyone needs connection. Even billionaire CEOs, I imagine. He looked at her with surprise, then laughed. Especially them, perhaps. They stopped at a small ice cream stand and Brielle insisted on paying. My park, my treat, she said firmly when he reached for his wallet. Dorian raised his hands in surrender. As you wish. They sat on a bench, eating their ice cream and watching a group of children flying kites. I used to do that with my grandmother, Brielle said, nodding toward the kids. She made kites from scratch, said it was how she used to play as a girl in the Philippines. You miss her a lot, every day. She was my anchor. Dorian was quiet. For a moment. I never had that. My father was always working and my mother was distant, more concerned with social status than emotional connection. That must have been hard for a child. He shrugged. I didn't know any different. It made me self-reliant. And maybe a little too comfortable with being alone, Brielle suggested gently. Dorian looked at her, surprise in his eyes. You're very perceptive. It's just what I see. They spent the afternoon walking and talking. Dorian listened intently. as she shared stories about the neighborhood, her former job at the hotel, her dreams of someday starting a community program for isolated seniors. "You have a gift," he said as they watched the sun begin to set. "The way you connect with people. It's not really a gift, I just pay attention. Everyone has a story they want to share, if someone will just listen." "And who listens to your story, Brielle?" The question caught her off guard. "I guess my friend Mia from the coffee shop. And now you, oddly enough." "I'm honored," he said softly. As they walked back toward the park entrance, Dorian stopped suddenly. "I have an idea about the flower shop." "What's that?" "What if we turned it into a community space? A place where seniors could gather, maybe learn flower arranging or just have tea and company." Brielle stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Completely. The main floor could still sell flowers, but the back room and upstairs could be renovated into a meeting space. That would be amazing, but what? Why would you do that? It's not exactly a profitable business model." Dorian's expression softened. "Not everything I do is about profit, contrary to popular belief. Besides, it would make the flower shop purchase seem less impulsive and more strategic." Brielle laughed. "Saving face is important, I suppose." "So will you help me plan it? You know what the community needs better than I do." "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Kessler?" she asked, half joking. His face grew serious. "Would you accept if I were?" Brielle hesitated. "I don't know. It would complicate things between us." "How so?" "Because I'd never know if you hired me because of my skills or because you wanted to keep me close." Dorian nodded slowly. "That's fair. What if I found someone else to manage it? But you could consult, share your ideas?" "I'd like that," she admitted. "Good." His face brightened. "Dinner next Friday? I'd like to hear more about what the community center might need." "Dinner to discuss business? That sounds suspiciously like a date disguised as work." "Can't it be both?" he asked with a small smile. Brielle couldn't help but smile back. "I suppose it can." Over the next few weeks, Brielle and Dorian fell into a pattern. They met for coffee, for walks, for dinners where they discussed the community flower shop project that was quickly becoming a reality. Workers were already renovating the space, following plans that incorporated many of Brielle's ideas. One evening, Dorian took her to see the progress. The upstairs was being transformed into a bright, open space with comfortable seating areas and large tables for activities. "What do you think?" he asked, watching her reaction closely. Brielle turned to him, her eyes shining. "It's perfect. I can already imagine Mrs. Patel and her friends up here, making flower arrangements and gossiping." Dorian smiled. "I've invited a potential manager to meet us here tomorrow. Her name is Elena Rodriguez. She ran a similar program in another city before moving here." "You've done your homework," Brielle said, impressed. "I want this to succeed," he replied simply. As they stood there in the half-finished room, surrounded by the promise of what the space could become, Dorian reached for her hand. "Brielle, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" she asked, suddenly concerned by his serious tone. "I'm leaving for Tokyo tomorrow night, a major business deal that can't be handled remotely. I'll be gone for 2 weeks." "Oh." She was surprised by the disappointment she felt. "Well, that's not so long. I'd like to take you to dinner before I go, somewhere special." "Okay," she agreed, "but nowhere too fancy. I'm running out of good dresses." He laughed. "Wear whatever makes you comfortable. You're beautiful in anything." The compliment made her blush. "Smooth talker." "Only with you," he said softly, and the look in his eyes made her heart skip a beat. Dorian's idea of not too fancy turned out to be a private dining room in one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. But he had remembered her favorite flowers, daisies which she had mentioned offhandedly weeks ago, and they decorated the table in simple glass vases. "This is lovely," she said as they were seated, "but you didn't have to go to so much trouble." "It's no trouble," he assured her. "I wanted our last evening together to be special." "It's only 2 weeks," she reminded him with a smile. "The longest. 2 weeks of my recent memory, I expect," he said, his eyes never leaving her face. Over dinner, they talked about everything except his imminent departure. Brielle told him about a job interview she had the next day at a senior living facility. "It's for an activities coordinator position. Not what I was doing before, but I think I'd enjoy it." "You'd be perfect for it," Dorian said with genuine enthusiasm. "They'd be lucky to have you." After dessert, he reached across the table and took her hand. "Brielle, these past few weeks have been unlike anything I've experienced before." "For me too," she admitted. "When I get back from Tokyo, I'd like to make this, us, more official. If that's what you want too." Brielle felt a flutter of both excitement and anxiety. "Dorian, I care about you, more than I expected to, but I still wonder if this can really work. Our lives are so different." "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly. She thought about it. Despite his wealth and power, despite the impulsive purchase of the flower shop, Dorian had never been anything but respectful and genuinely interested in her life and thoughts. "Yes," she finally said. "I think I do." His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Then let's see where this goes. No pressure, no expectations, just us getting to know each other better." "I'd like that," she said, squeezing his hand as "yeah." They left the restaurant, Dorian's driver waiting at the curb. He turned to her. "Can I drop you home?" "Actually, I think I'll walk a bit. Clear my head. It's a nice night." Dorian nodded. "I understand." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I got you something. A going-away present, though I'm the one leaving." Brielle opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny daisy. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Something to remember me by while I'm gone," he said, helping her fasten it around her wrist. "As if I could forget," she said with a smile. Dorian leaned down and kissed her cheek, his lips lingering for just a moment. "Good night, Brielle. I'll call you from Tokyo." "Good night, Dorian. Safe travels." As his car pulled away, Brielle touched the daisy charm on her wrist. In just a few short weeks, this man had come into her life and changed everything. The thought of him being gone for 2 weeks left her feeling strangely empty. With a sigh, she turned and began walking home, unaware that the next 2 weeks would bring revelations that would shake the foundation of their blossoming relationship. 2 days after Dorian left for Tokyo, Brielle got the job at Sunshine Meadows Senior Living Center. The director had been impressed by her genuine warmth and creative ideas for engaging residents. She would start on Monday, and for the first time in months she felt financially secure again. She called Mia to celebrate over coffee at their usual spot. "So things are looking up for you," Mia said with a smile. "New job, new boyfriend, a rich one at that." Brielle rolled her eyes. "He's not my boyfriend. Not officially, anyway. The man bought a whole flower shop to talk to you and is turning it into a community center based on your ideas. If that's not boyfriend behavior, I don't know what is." "When you put it like that, it does sound a bit..." Brielle trailed off. "Romantic?" Mia suggested. "Or obsessive," Brielle countered, though she was smiling. "But he's been nothing but respectful, and he listens, really listens when I talk. Unlike Jeff the jerk," Mia said, referring to Brielle's ex-fiancé. "Exactly. Dorian seems genuinely interested in me, the real me, not some version of me he wants me to be." Mia's expression grew more serious. "Just be careful, Brie. Men with that kind of money and power, they're used to getting what they want." "I know, but Dorian's different." "I hope you're right," Mia said, though she didn't look convinced. "For what it's worth, I've never seen you smile this much about a guy before. Not even Jeff." Brielle touched the daisy charm on her bracelet, a habit she'd developed in just a few days. "He calls every night from Tokyo, even though it's the middle of the day there. He must be busy, but he always makes time." "That's a good sign," Mia admitted. "Just promise me you'll keep your eyes open, okay? Remember what your grandma always said, if something seems too good to be true, it usually is," Brielle finished with a sigh. "I know. But maybe, just maybe, sometimes good things do happen to ordinary people like me." The next morning, Brielle decided to check on the progress at the flower shop. Dorian had given her a key, saying she should feel free to visit any time, even while he was away. When she arrived, she found the main construction crew gone, but the door was unlocked. Voices drifted from the upstairs room, a woman and a man in what sounded like a heated discussion. Brielle climbed the stairs quietly, not wanting to interrupt if it was the new manager, Eleanor, whom she was supposed to meet later that week. "Just don't understand why he's doing this," the woman was saying, her voice sharp with frustration. "A community center. Since when does Dorian Kessler care about senior citizens?" "Since he met this woman, apparently," the man replied. "You know how he gets when he's fixated on something. Or someone. Who is she, anyway? Some gold digger who's figured out how to manipulate him." Brielle froze on the steps, her heart pounding. According to Vincent, she's a nobody. Used to work at the Grand Hotel as a concierge, now unemployed. Well, she was until Dorian arranged for her to get a job at some senior center. Brielle felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Dorian had arranged her job? Just yesterday she'd been so proud of getting it on her own merits. "Classic Dorian," the woman scoffed. "Remember Clarissa? He bought her an entire art gallery. Just to keep her happy. This seems different. Vincent says he's never seen Dorian like this before. Cancelled meetings, rearranged his Tokyo trip." "It won't last," the woman said dismissively. "It never does with him. He gets obsessed, showers them with attention and gifts, then gets bored when they start wanting more than he can give emotionally." "You sound bitter, Vanessa." Vanessa, Dorian's sister. The one he'd mentioned wasn't close to him. "I'm not bitter, I'm realistic. My brother doesn't do real relationships, he does projects, and this woman is clearly his latest project." Brielle couldn't bear to hear more. She turned and fled down the stairs, out the door, and onto the street, tears blurring her vision. Everything had been a lie. Her job, the community center. It was all Dorian manipulating her life, moving her around like a piece on a chessboard. When she reached her apartment, she threw herself onto her bed and sobbed. Then she removed the silver bracelet and placed it in her jewelry box. She felt like a fool. Her phone rang. Dorian's nightly call from Tokyo. She ignored it. It rang again 5 minutes later. Again, she let it go to voicemail. A text appeared. "Everything okay? Worried about you. Call me when you can." Brielle turned off her phone. She needed time to think. For the next week, Brielle went through the motions of preparing for her new job. She ignored Dorian's increasingly concerned messages and calls. She told herself she would confront him when he returned, but for now, she needed distance. On Friday, she was arranging her new desk at Sunshine Meadows when her supervisor, Janet, stopped by. "Settling in nicely?" the older woman asked. "Yes, thank you. Everyone's been so welcoming," Janet smiled. "We're lucky to have you. Your background in hospitality is exactly what we were looking for." Brielle couldn't help herself. "Can I ask you something, Janet? Why did you hire me? Was it really because of my qualifications?" Janet looked puzzled. "Of course. Why else?" "It's just, I heard something that made me think I might have had some help getting this position." Janet's confusion seemed genuine. "I don't know what you heard, but you were hired because you were the best candidate. Period. I have no idea what you're talking about." Relief washed over Brielle. At least that part hadn't been a lie. Maybe Vanessa and her companion had been misinformed. But what about the rest? The pattern they'd described, Dorian's obsessions, his gifts, his eventual boredom, made her stomach twist with anxiety. That evening, Brielle finally turned her phone back on. There were several missed calls and texts from Dorian, the most recent from just an hour ago. "I'm back early. Need to see you. Please call me." Instead of calling, Brielle texted back, "We need to talk. Meet me at the flower shop tomorrow at noon." His reply was immediate. "I'll be there. Is everything all right?" She didn't respond. The next day, Brielle arrived at the flower shop to find Dorian already waiting. He looked tired with dark circles under his eyes, but his face lit up when he saw her. "Brielle," he said, stepping toward her, then stopping when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" "I was here last week," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I overheard a conversation between your sister and someone else." Dorian's face paled. "Vanessa was here? What did you hear?" "Enough to make me question everything." "About us. Did you arrange for me to get the job at Sunshine Meadows?" "No," he said immediately. "Absolutely not." "What about this community center? Is it real, or just another way to impress your latest project?" Dorian winced. "You heard Vanessa call you that." "Answer the question, Dorian." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd never seen from him before. The community center is real. Yes, I was inspired by you, but it's not what Vanessa made it sound like. And what about the other women? Clarissa with her art gallery. How many others have there been, Dorian? How many women have you showered with gifts and attention until you got bored? He looked genuinely pained. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like, Brielle demanded, crossing her arms. Dorian sighed heavily. Can we sit down? Please? They moved to the recently installed bench in the downstairs area of the shop. Dorian kept a careful distance between them. Years ago, there was a woman named Clarissa, he began. She was an artist, and yes, I did buy a gallery where her work was featured. But it wasn't just to impress her. It was a sound business investment in an up-and-coming neighborhood. And were there others? He hesitated. A few. Not as many as Vanessa probably implied. I dated a woman who wanted to open a restaurant, so I invested in it. Another who was passionate about a particular charity, so I became a major donor. And then you got bored and moved on? It wasn't about boredom, he said quietly. It was about reality setting in. Every relationship starts with infatuation, Brielle. You know that, but eventually, you have to move past that stage to something deeper. And that's where things always fell apart. Why? Dorian looked down at his hands. Because I realized they were more interested in what I could do for them than in who I actually was. Or because I was too consumed with work to give them what they needed emotionally. Or because what? Brielle pressed when he trailed off. Because I never felt with any of them what I felt the moment you walked into room 14B, he said, finally meeting her eyes. That sense of recognition, like I'd found someone who could see past all the trappings of my life to the person underneath. Brielle wanted to believe him, but doubt still gnawed at her. And what happens when this infatuation stage ends with us? Will I just be another story your sister tells the next woman? No, he said firmly, because this is different. I'm different when I'm with you. I don't feel like I have to impress you or take care of everything for you. You're so fiercely independent. It drives me crazy sometimes. Despite herself, Brielle smiled a little at that. But what about the community center? She asked. Was that just to make me happy? It started that way, he admitted. I won't lie to you. But the more we talked about it, the more I genuinely believed in the idea. That's why I found Elena, why I've been overseeing the renovations myself. I want it to succeed on its own merits, not just as a gift to you. They sat in silence for a moment, Brielle processing everything he'd said. I need to know one more thing, she finally said. That night at dinner, before you left for Tokyo, you asked if I trusted you and I said yes. Do you trust me, Dorian? Really trust me? Yes, he said without hesitation. Then why didn't you tell me about your past, about the pattern Vanessa described? You had to know how it would look if I found out from someone else. Dorian closed his eyes briefly. I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid you'd see me as just another rich man using his money to get what he wants. Afraid you'd walk away before we had a chance to see if this could be real. His honesty touched her, despite her lingering doubts. I need time to think about all this, Dorian. I understand. He reached for her hand, then stopped himself. For what it's worth, I missed you terribly in Tokyo. The thought of coming back to see you was the only thing that made those meetings bearable. Brielle stood up. I should go. I start my new job on Monday. My job that I got on my own merits, apparently. You did, he assured her. I would never interfere with that. At the door, she turned back to him. I'm not wearing the bracelet. I noticed, he said quietly. I'm not saying never, just not yet. Not until I'm sure. I'll wait, he said simply, however long it takes. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Brielle. Her new job at Sunshine Meadows kept her busy, and she found genuine joy in organizing activities for the residents. Many of them reminded her of her grandmother, and she threw herself into making their days brighter. True to his word, Dorian gave her space. He texted occasionally, simple messages asking about her day or sharing a thought that had reminded him of her. Nothing demanding, nothing presumptuous. Elena Rodriguez, the manager Dorian had hired for the community flower shop, contacted Brielle to ask for her input on programs. Despite her reservations, Brielle couldn't help but get involved. The project had become important to her, regardless of how it had started. One evening, as she was leaving Sunshine Meadows, she was surprised to see Vanessa Kessler waiting in the parking lot. "Ms. Adams," Vanessa called, approaching her. "Up close, the family." Resemblance to Dorian was striking, the same intense blue eyes though lacking his warmth. "Ms. Kessler," Brielle acknowledged cautiously. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to apologize," Vanessa said, looking uncomfortable. "My brother told me you overheard my conversation at the flower shop. What I said was unfair." Brielle crossed her arms. "Was it untrue?" "Not entirely," Vanessa admitted, "but it was colored by my own complicated relationship with Dorian. We haven't been close since our parents died. I blamed him for some of the decisions he made with the company." "Why are you telling me this?" Vanessa sighed. "Because despite our differences, I care about my brother, and I've never seen him like this before. Usually when he becomes infatuated with someone, it's all grand gestures and public declarations. This is different. He's quieter about you, more thoughtful." Brielle didn't know what to say to that. "He's not perfect," Vanessa continued. "Far from it. But he deserves a chance to show you who he really is, beyond the money and the power. That's something most people never bother to look for." "I appreciate your candor," Brielle said carefully, "but my relationship with your brother is between us." Vanessa nodded. "Fair enough. Just don't judge him too harshly for his past. We all make mistakes when we're searching for connection. With Hume." That she turned and walked to her luxury car, leaving Brielle with even more to think about. A week later, Brielle received an invitation to the grand opening of Wildflower Community Studio, as the flower shop had been renamed. The opening was scheduled for the coming Saturday. She debated whether to attend, but curiosity won out. When she arrived, the place was bustling with activity. The main floor was a beautiful flower shop, with Elena helping customers select arrangements. But it was the upstairs community space that took Brielle's breath away. The room had been transformed, exactly as she had envisioned. Warm, welcoming, with large tables for activities, comfortable seating areas for conversation, and large windows letting in abundant natural light. A small kitchenette had been added in one corner, and shelves lined the walls filled with books, board games, and craft supplies. "What do you think?" Dorian's voice came from behind her. Brielle turned to find him watching her, his expression hopeful. "It's perfect," she said honestly. "Exactly what I imagined. I hoped you'd say that. Elena's already got a full schedule of classes and events planned for the next month. I saw the calendar downstairs. Flower arranging for seniors, reading groups, crafting circles, and we're partnering with Sunshine Meadows to bring some of their residents here once a week," Dorian added. Janet was very enthusiastic about the idea. Brielle looked at him with new appreciation. "You did all this while giving me space to think." "The project was important," he said simply. "To the community. To you. So it was important to me too." They walked around the space together, Dorian pointing out features and explaining the programs. In every detail, Brielle could see that he'd been listening, really listening to what she'd shared about her vision. "Dorian," she said finally, when they had a moment alone by the windows, "this isn't just about impressing me, is it?" "No," he said quietly. "It started that way, I won't deny it. But somewhere along the line it became something more. I began to see the value in it, beyond just making you happy. It became about making a real difference in people's lives." Brielle studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity. She found none. "I'd like to try again," she said softly. "Us, I mean. But slowly, and with complete honesty from now on." The smile that spread across Dorian's face was like sunrise. "I'd like that too, very much. No more grand gestures," she warned. "No more trying to manage my life." "Agreed," he said. "Though I can't promise I won't still want to give you things sometimes. It's how I was taught to show affection." "Small things," Brielle conceded, "like the bracelet. Speaking of which," she reached into her purse and pulled out the silver daisy bracelet, which she'd started carrying with her everywhere. You kept it, Dorian said, surprise and pleasure in his voice. Of course I kept it. I was angry, not heartless. She held out her wrist. Would you? Gently, Dorian fastened the bracelet around her wrist, his fingers lingering on her pulse point. I promise to earn your trust, he said seriously. Every day. And I promise to be patient, she replied. As we figure out how our two very different worlds can fit together. From downstairs came the sound of Elena calling everyone for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Dorian held out his hand to Brielle. Shall we? He asked. Brielle took his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. Let's go open your community center, Mr. Kessler. Our community center, Ms. Adams, he corrected with a smile. It was always meant to be ours. As they descended the stairs together, Brielle felt a lightness in her heart that had been missing for weeks. There were still questions to be answered, challenges to face, but for now she was choosing to believe in the possibility of them. Two people from different worlds, finding common ground in a flower shop that had started as an impulsive gesture and become something meaningful, and that, she decided, was worth taking a chance on. 6 months passed, and the relationship between Brielle and Dorian blossomed into something neither of them had expected. True to his word, Dorian had respected her need for independence. He didn't shower her with extravagant gifts or try to solve her problems. Instead, he showed his affection in smaller, more meaningful ways, remembering details about her day, bringing her favorite coffee when he visited her at Sunshine Meadows, listening intently when she talked about her residence. Brielle, in turn, had worked to understand Dorian's world. She accompanied him to business dinners occasionally, where she charmed his associates with her genuine warmth. She listened patiently when he vented about corporate politics. And she never judged him for his wealth or privilege, seeing instead the man beneath who still carried the weight of family expectations and a lifetime of emotional distance. The Wildflower Community Studio had become a thriving hub for the neighborhood. Seniors gathered there daily for activities or simply for company. Elena had proven to be an excellent manager, and the flower shop portion of the business was doing surprisingly well. One Sunday evening, Brielle and Dorian sat on the rooftop. Garden they had added to the building. A small, peaceful oasis above the busy street. You know what I realized today? Dorian said, his arm around Brielle as they watched the sunset. What's that? It's been exactly 7 months since you walked into the wrong interview room. Brielle smiled at the memory. Room 14B, the best mistake I ever made. I was thinking about how different my life is now, Dorian continued. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Work, sleep, more work. I had everything and nothing at the same time. And now? She asked, looking up at him. Now I have purpose beyond just building the company bigger. I have connection, real connection. He kissed the top of her head. Thank you for that. I didn't do anything, Brielle protested. You had it in you all along. You just needed permission to be more than your job title. Dorian nodded thoughtfully. Maybe. But you were the one who gave me that permission. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sky turned from gold to deep blue. I have something for you, Dorian said eventually, reaching into his pocket. It's not an extravagant gift, I promise. He handed her a small, simple envelope. Inside was a key. What's this for? Brielle asked, though she had a suspicion. My home, Dorian said simply. I want you to feel welcome there, any time. No pressure to use it, but I wanted you to have it. Brielle turned the key over in her palm. It was a big step, but one she felt ready for. Thank you, this means a lot. There's something else, he said, his voice taking on a nervous quality she rarely heard from him. A question, actually. Brielle's heart began to beat faster. What is it? Would you consider moving in with me? Not right away, he added quickly. But maybe when your lease is up next month, we could take it slow, see how it feels. She hadn't been expecting this. Despite their growing closeness, Dorian had always been careful to respect her space. That's a big step, she said carefully. No. And if you're not ready, I completely understand. Your apartment is your sanctuary. I would never want to take that away from you. Brielle thought about her tiny apartment with its worn furniture and familiar comforts. Then she thought about Dorian's penthouse. Beautiful but sterile, lacking. The warmth of a real home. What if we did it differently, she suggested. How so? What if instead of me moving into your place, we found somewhere new together? Somewhere that could be ours from the beginning, not yours that I moved into. Dorian looked surprised, then thoughtful. I hadn't considered that. My penthouse has always just been a place to sleep between workdays. It never really felt like a home. Exactly. We could find a place that feels like home to both of us. Maybe not as grand as your penthouse, but not as small as my apartment either. Something in between. I'd like that, Dorian said, his eyes lighting up with the idea. A fresh start for both of us. Brielle smiled, relieved that he understood. So is that a yes to looking for a place together? Absolutely yes, he said, pulling her closer. Though I have to warn you, I know nothing about decorating. My interior. Designer chose everything in my current place, I noticed, Brielle teased. It looks like a spread from a magazine, not a place where someone actually lives. Ouch, Dorian laughed. But fair. Don't worry, she assured him. Between my coziness and your budget, I think we can create something perfect. As they continued to watch the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky, Brielle felt a deep sense of contentment. Their journey hadn't been smooth or conventional, but it had brought them to this moment, and that was what mattered. 2 weeks later, Brielle was at Sunshine Meadows, leading a painting class for the residents, when Janet appeared at the door. Brielle, there's someone here to see you, she said, her expression strangely tense. A man. He says he's an old friend. Curious, Brielle excused herself and headed to the lobby. She stopped short when she saw who was waiting. Jeff? She said, hardly believing her eyes. Her ex-fiancé stood awkwardly in the middle of the lobby, looking much the same as he had 5 years ago when he'd broken her heart. His suit was expensive, his hair perfectly styled, but his smile seemed forced. Hello, Brie, he said, using the nickname she'd once loved hearing from him. You look great. What are you doing here, Jeff? She asked, keeping her distance. I was in town for a conference and heard you were working here, he explained. I thought I'd stop by, see how you're doing. I'm doing well, she said simply. Very well, actually. So I've heard, Jeff said, his tone changing slightly. Word is you're dating Dorian Kessler now. Quite a step up from a hotel concierge. The implied insult, both to her former job and to her relationship with Dorian, wasn't lost on Brielle. My relationship with Dorian isn't about his money or status, she said coolly. Unlike some people, he values me for who I am, not what I do for a living. Jeff had the grace to look embarrassed. Look, Brie, I didn't come here to fight. I've been thinking about you lately, about us. Maybe I made a mistake back then. Brielle stared at him in disbelief. You're married, Jeff. He looked down at his left hand where a wedding band gleamed. It's complicated. Alicia and we're not as compatible as I thought. She's always working, focused on her career. So exactly what you wanted when you left. Me, Brielle pointed out. I was wrong, Jeff said, stepping closer. I didn't realize what I had with you until it was gone. You were always so supportive, so understanding. Because I loved you, Brielle said simply. But that was a long time ago. We could try again, Jeff suggested, reaching for her hand. Brielle stepped back, shaking her head. No, Jeff. We can't. You're married, and I'm in love with someone else. Someone who sees me clearly and loves all of me, not just the parts that are convenient. Jeff's expression hardened. Kessler will get bored with you eventually. Men like him always do. When that happens, don't come running back to me. I wouldn't dream of it, Brielle said, her voice steady despite the anger burning inside her. Goodbye, Jeff. She turned and walked back to her class, refusing to look back. Once she was alone in the hallway, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. Seeing Jeff had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, not because she still had feelings for him, but because his words had touched on her deepest insecurities about her relationship with Dorian. "You okay?" Janet asked, appearing beside her. "Fine," Brielle assured her. "Just an unwelcome blast from the past." "Want me to have security throw him out?" Janet offered, only half joking. Brielle smiled. "No need, he's leaving. Some people just can't accept when a chapter is truly closed." Back in her classroom, Brielle pushed thoughts of Jeff aside and focused on her residence. But that evening, as she drove to meet Dorian for dinner, the encounter weighed on her mind. "You're quiet tonight," Dorian observed as they sat at their Favorite table in Marco's restaurant. Rough day? Brielle hesitated, then decided on honesty. Jeff showed up at Sunshine Meadows today. Dorian's expression darkened. Your ex-fiancé, what did he want? To suggest that we try again, Brielle said, watching Dorian's reaction carefully. Even though he's married. That's... Dorian seemed to be searching for an appropriate word. Pathetic? Brielle suggested. I was going to say audacious, but pathetic works too. Dorian reached across the table and took her hand. Are you okay? I am, she said, realizing it was true. Seeing him just confirmed how far I've come, how different my life is now. In a good way, I hope. In the best way, she assured him. But he did say something that bothered me. He said you'd get bored with me eventually, that men like you always do. Dorian's face softened. Is that what you're worried about? That I'll get bored? Not really, Brielle said, then reconsidered. Maybe a little. Sometimes I still wonder what you see in me, when you could have anyone. I see everything, Dorian said simply. Your kindness, your honesty, the way you light up when you talk about your residents, the way you challenge me and don't let me hide behind my wealth or power. You make me a better man, Brielle. How could I possibly get bored with that? The sincerity in his eyes erased any lingering doubts Jeff's visit had stirred up. I love you, she said, the words coming naturally, even though it was the first time she'd said them aloud. Dorian's face transformed with joy. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. As they finished their meal, the conversation turned to their house hunt. They had seen several properties but hadn't found the right one yet. There's actually another place I'd like to show you, Dorian said, as they were leaving the restaurant. It just came on the market yesterday. The realtor sent me the listing and I think it might be perfect. Can we see it tomorrow? Brielle asked. Actually, Dorian looked slightly sheepish. I arranged for us to go see it tonight, if you're up for it. The owners are out of town, so the realtor said we could stop by after dinner. Tonight? You must really like this place. I have a good feeling about it, he admitted, but I wanted you to see it before I got too excited. They drove to a quiet neighborhood not far from Wildflower Community Studio. It was a mixed area, some older homes, some newer developments, but all well-maintained and with a strong sense of community. The house Dorian showed her was a charming brick townhouse with a small front garden. Inside it was spacious but not overwhelming, with 3 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a cozy living room with a fireplace. The back opened onto a private patio garden that reminded Brielle of the rooftop garden at the studio. This is beautiful, she said as they wandered through the rooms. Not too big, not too small. The master bedroom has a reading nook I thought you'd like, Dorian pointed out, showing her the window seat overlooking the garden. And there's a home office for when I need to work late but don't want to go into the city. You've thought of everything, Brielle said, touched by how well he knew her preferences. One of the spare bedrooms could be for guests, he continued, and the other, well, it could be whatever we want it to be. A craft room for you, maybe, or... He hesitated. Or what? Brielle prompted. Or a nursery someday, if that's something. You might want. Dorian's voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed his hope. Brielle's heart skipped a beat. They'd never discussed children before. You want kids? I didn't think I did, he admitted. Not until you. But now the idea of a family, our family, feels right. Not right away, he added quickly, but someday. Brielle could see it then. The 2 of them in this house making it a home. Maybe with a child someday, a little boy or girl with Dorian's blue eyes or her warm smile. The image filled her with unexpected longing. I love this house, she said softly. It feels like us. The relief and joy on Dorian's face was all the confirmation she needed. Should we make an offer? Yes, she said without hesitation. This is home. 1 month later, they moved into their new house. The process had been surprisingly smooth. The sellers had accepted their offer immediately, and Dorian had handled the financial details efficiently. Brielle had insisted on contributing what she could from her savings, even though it was a fraction of the cost. It was important to her that this was truly their home together, not just another thing Dorian had bought. The day they moved in, friends gathered to help and celebrate. Mia came with her boyfriend. Elena and several seniors from Wildflower Studio brought plants for the garden. Even Vanessa appeared briefly with a housewarming gift, a beautiful painting for their living room. "Congratulations," Vanessa said, hugging her brother awkwardly. "The house is lovely. Not what I expected from you, but it suits you both." "Thank you for coming," Dorian said, his arm around Brielle. "It means a lot." "Well, I'm trying," Vanessa admitted, "to be a better sister, to understand why this life makes you happy when it's so different from what we were raised to expect." "It makes me happy because it's real," Dorian said simply. "For the first time in my life, I'm living for myself, not for some idea of success our parents instilled in me." Vanessa looked thoughtful. "Maybe you're the smart one after all." She turned to Brielle. "Take care of him. He's not as tough as he pretends to be." "I know," Brielle said with a smile. "That's one of the things I love most about him." After everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Brielle and sat on their new patio furniture, watching the stars appear in the evening. "Sky, happy?" Dorian asked, his fingers intertwined with hers. "Completely," she answered. "You?" "More than I ever thought possible." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I have something for you. A housewarming gift." "Dorian, we agreed no extravagant gifts," Brielle reminded him, though her tone was light. "It's not extravagant, at least not in the way you mean." He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a simple but elegant ring, a single diamond set in white gold, with tiny daisies engraved in the band. "This isn't just a housewarming gift, is it?" Brielle asked, her voice catching. Dorian took the ring from the box and held it between them. "Brielle Adams, you walked into the wrong room 7 months ago and changed my life forever. You've taught me what real connection means, what home feels like. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled Brielle's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." As Dorian slipped the ring onto her finger, Brielle thought about the journey that had brought them here. A mistaken room number, a chance conversation, a flower shop purchased on impulse. So many small moments that had led to this big one. "Room 14B," she said softly. "Who would have thought a wrong turn could lead so perfectly right?" "I did," Dorian said, drawing her into his arms. "From the moment you started talking about making people feel seen, I knew. Some mistakes are actually fate in disguise." As they sealed their engagement with a kiss, the stars shone down on their new home, a perfect middle ground between their two worlds, a place where both of them could be exactly who they were meant to be, together. In the months and years to come, there would be challenges. Dorian's corporate world would sometimes clash with Brielle's more grounded perspective. They would argue about money, about time, about all the things couples argue about, but they would always find their way back to each other, to the truth at the core of their relationship, that love doesn't require perfection or grand gestures, just the courage to see each other clearly and the willingness to choose each other. Day after day, and it all began with a simple mix-up, a wrong turn that led Brielle Adams into room 14B and straight into the heart of Dorian Kessler, changing both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. Sometimes the best stories begin with a mistake, and sometimes those mistakes turn out to be the best decisions we never knew we were making. The end.